God, pirates. And I know that this is coming out a little bit late. Look, man, shit happens. Monkeypox is a thing. I don't have monkeypox. But before we get into that, I actually was scrolling on Twitter the other day and I actually saw monkeypox for the first time. Mask up, sanitize your hands. Good God, that is some disgusting shit. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about One Piece, and this week's chapter, kind of on the good side. Confirm some things, and you know, we got to see Shanks, man. Shanks is, we'll talk about him later. But without further ado, let's go ahead and discuss, recap, and just talk about the chapter. One Piece, chapter 1055, The New Era. So when we initially cut into the chapter, we see Onigashima, well, not Onigashima. Although from Flower Capital, you could probably see Onigashima, but no, from Flower Capital, we see everybody having fun. We get a panel of Nami with Otama with Zeus. Which, okay, first talking point. Apparently the homies aren't gone. So either A, Big Mom and Kaido are still alive, or B, the homies don't necessarily disappear. Once they're given a soul, I guess their lifespan is completely separate from the soul fruit user, which is kind of weird because I remember back on Dressrosa with, what's that little girl's name? I was just thinking about her earlier. Sugar. With Sugar, remember, in order for people to be turned back from toys, which in Sugar's case, she actually had to pass out. So the soul fruit, it didn't even, hold up, and not even just the soul fruit, the shadow fruit. When Moria was finally defeated, he, like all the shadows he'd absorbed over the years, like over the decades probably that he had the fruit and he'd, you know, taken, they all went back to their respective owners all over the world. So kind of weird, but yeah, Zeus is still here. So then we cut back over to Momonosuke and the remaining Scabbards and Yamato fighting Aramaki Green Bull. I think I'm mispronouncing his name, so I'm not saying his name, like Yokogyu. I think that's how you say it, but anyway. So yet again, Momo's still on this kick, like, hey, Yamato, don't fight him, don't strike him, don't do nothing to him. So Yamato, she's still confused. She's still like, bruh, what do you mean? I'm here. I can help you. And Momo, yet again, being the same type of not chauvinistic, being the same type of stubborn ass samurai that his people are, you know, people of Wano. He's getting his ass whooped, getting popped by a branch, and he's still saying, don't you dare strike him. Don't, no matter what, you're not to strike him. Then Green Bull wraps him up and is throwing his ass. Like he's getting like look, Momonosuke's getting manhandled. So then Raizo comes in with his ninja art, with his scroll fruit, which I think he's been confirmed as a devil fruit, if not. But yeah, he uses fire escape, which allows him to, which, you know, his scroll unravels and then it releases a whole bunch of fire, which does hurt Aramaki. But he uses a technique by the name of Fire Break Forest. And even goes on to tell him, like, look, do you really think that I could hack it as a Navy admiral if this was all it took? But he admits that it is a weakness of his. So kind of like how Crocodile was weak to water inherently, he's weak to fire. So he knows the weakness, but he's like, he's gotten to the point where he can overcome his weakness. He then goes on and it looks like he infuses Haki in his branches and then impales Raizo. And Raizo is able to, like, it's not so deep that he's like, you know, it's through him. It's just in him, like it's stuck in there, but it doesn't look like it's that bad. But then you notice a lump in the branch itself, and it's starting to suck his life away, and he's starting to dry up. And even Kawamatsu goes to start cutting the leaves and vines. But he's like, okay, every time I cut one, two more come in, and then we see Dogstorm, Cat Viper, and The lady ninja. I cannot remember her name. What's her name? What's her name? She was known as the man killer. You know who I'm talking about. And they're like, you know, and even they're like, you know, just having weaknesses, and even Cat Viper's like, fuck it, man, just keep cutting grass. So in Denjiro, Kawamatsu, and Cat Viper all get caught up. But before that, we cut over to the palace. Specifically under the palace in Kozuki Sukiyaki's secret chamber. And then below. Now we see a corridor going down the staircase. And then somebody's saying, I'm surprised you sniffed this out. And then we learn that Sukiyaki is leading Robin, and Law came to actually see what they were doing. And he even goes on to say, like, y'all weren't with everybody else at the party, so I was suspicious. And then he's like, no, don't act like I'm some sort of hyena. And then he's like, okay. So Sukiyaki goes on to explain that he never told Kaido or Orochi about this route, but, and here's another thing that is to be discussed, but because Jack the Drought, the lead performer, was a fisherman, they discovered the poneglyph in quick order. Now, I saw some people launch day talking about this, how Jack was the one who discovered the poneglyph. Now here's the thing. This could mean one of two things. Either Oda fucked up, which I'm less inclined to believe, or the latter, because it implies that Jack found it. So, which means he would probably have to swim. Now here's the thing. Well, I'm gonna go a little further and then I'm gonna explain. So then Robin goes on to ask, like, okay, why does being a fisherman matter? You know, for finding a poneglyph, because yet again, it's a poneglyph. I mean, finding it's not really the issue, quote unquote, but why would being a fisherman specifically help you find it? So he goes on to explain, quicker to see for yourself. And then Law is like, how long is it gonna take? And then Tsukaki's like, a couple of centuries in the past. So yet again, they're asking questions. Like, okay, how long, like, where's this light? There's some mysterious light, like a light in the tunnel. Like, what the fuck? Why is light here? So then they even go on to say, they continue, but they're like, there's a glass block at the end of the tunnel. And then, so Sukiyaki's like, go ahead and look through. We're on the seafloor at this point. It's then they see a village, buildings in the Wano style that look kind of lived in. It's Wano at the bottom of the sea. Sukiyaki then goes on to explain that is the Wano of about 800 years ago, which is a completely different Wano than the one that you know. And then so they both ask, so does that mean? And he says, it means just as I said. Whatever happened in the past is unclear to me. And then he goes on to say, the fact that it is not seawater probably explains this good preservation. Because, of course, everything looks worn, and, you know, like, there's probably coral and shit, seaweed, moss growing all over everything. Because there are fish swimming around and everything. But it's like, 800 years, like, shit, like, especially the stuff they build their buildings out of, should be, like, flat, gone. But they're not. So here's the thing. The poneglyph is down here. He then explains with a panel in the background showing that Wano is actually a country with a very large mountain in like underneath it. Like huge. But at some point in the past, there were not two, but like a stone structure, a great wall was constructed around it. And it filled up with rainwater. So pretty much the people of the past had to abandon their homes. And instead of, you know, leaving the country, they pretty much where the walls stopped is currently where quote unquote sea level for Wano is. So Wano isn't a flat country. It's like there's a mountain, there's a mountain up here, here's sea level. That's how Wano used to be. But at some point, walls came up, probably say somewhere around this high, and then the walls filled up with rainwater. So what they know now, they're actually probably hundreds of meters, if not thousands of meters. I think just probably hundreds of meters in the air. That's why Wano's so weird to get to, because the country itself is not sea level anymore. The country itself is actually built very high. So the quote unquote waterfall that you have to go up isn't a quote unquote natural waterfall. It's the water spilling over. That's why there were koi fish. Because I remember, because somebody pointed out, when they were coming in, Sanji was like, well, when Luffy and his group was coming in, Sanji was like, wait a minute, why the fuck are there koi fish? These are freshwater fish. They shouldn't be able to survive in the sea. Because yet again, seawater, like water, all water ain't water, of course we know that, but the salinity in the water can affect, if an animal is not built to live in seawater, that can affect it. Same thing with crocodiles. There are saltwater crocodiles, there are freshwater crocodiles. There are freshwater fish, there are salt fish. But yeah, so that's pretty much the buildup of Wano, but that's why the poneglyph is in old Wano, it's underwater, which brings me back to Jack. So like I said, either one or two things happen. Oda fucked up, or, which I'm finally getting to, Jack may not have eaten his devil fruit that long ago. Because at least from what we've seen from both King and Queen, they were able to go into their quote unquote human, because King isn't a human, he's a Lunarian. But King was able to go through his base form, hybrid, partial transformation, full pterodon. Same thing for Queen. Hell, Queen was even able to incorporate his cyborg parts in his hybrid and full Brachiosaurus form, but Jack never did. Whenever we saw him, he was either fully fishman or fully mammoth. So which begs the question, because the panel that they shows Jack being him being big. He doesn't look much different from how he is now in the current story. So, like I say, either one or two things happened. Either he just fell, either Oda fell well, or he could have just fell down there. You know, like one time he might have fallen over in old. Well, he might have fallen over pretty much. Or there's a third option: Oda didn't fuck up. Also, so either Jack hasn't had his fruit for that long, which potentially that's a potential thing, or Jack, one time when they were coming in, we were sailing around Wano, Jack fell over because even with him falling over in the story, it's not the first time. When Jack fell into the sea when he fought Fujitora and them, they were able to go get him. It wasn't like a new thing. Same thing when his fleet was capsized against Unisha. He was on the bottom of the ocean. They went to go get him. It's not that hard of a thing. It happens it probably happened more than a dozen times. Like, I don't think this is a new occurrence. So yeah, so probably what may have happened potentially is they were sailing around, Jack fell off the fucking boat, and yet again, he didn't die. He's a fisherman. He can breathe on the water. So him being submerged in water just means he can't move. That's the worst that happens to him. But when he hit the ground, he was like, wait a minute. So when they came and got him, they probably saw what the fuck this shit was, and he was like, look, somebody get me a suit. There's something here. So anyway, he goes on to explain, yet again, blah, blah, blah. They built a new kingdom, higher up. And that's the one of today. And then he goes to a chamber and says, we're here. And we see the road poneglyph. And Robin goes on to say, that's the third. One more, and we have to get Laugh Tale. Now, they're a little higher up than old Wano. So they're kind of under the mountain. And he then goes on to say, it is further down into the earth where the ancient weapon Pluton is said to rest. He even says, I've never seen it for myself, and I cannot show it to you now. He then goes on to explain, in order to retrieve Pluton, the walls that are around Wano would need to be torn down. In other words, opening the borders means destroying the country's natural defense and unleashing an ancient weapon onto the world. Now, remember earlier in the arc, before the fight was done, before the, damn, I lost my train of thought. Before the fight ended, when Momo said he wasn't gonna open the borders, we all looked at him like he was crazy. Your dad wants to open the borders. The Scabbers want to fulfill your dad's wish to open the borders, but she don't want to open the borders. Why? Now, this brings into question everything that's happened. Not in a bad way, but it just makes you wonder. Because remember, Odin went to Laugh-Tale and Odin can read the poneglyphs. So whatever the fuck they learned at Laugh-Tale, Odin was still okay with opening the borders. He wasn't like, oh, let's wait 20 years. He was like, okay, I'll go ahead and open the borders. Y'all, yet again, somebody can go to Laugh-Tale, do all that shit. I'm opening the borders. So that's odd. How, well, or maybe it might be a fact, or maybe it might be a fact of interpretation. Maybe for whatever reason, Odin interpreted the like opening the borders and unleashing Pluton differently than Momo did. Excuse me. So then Rama's like, wow. And she even asked, again, she asked the question, why did Kozuki Odin want to do such a thing? He then goes on to say that, hey, look, I've told you everything that the shogunate, like my family, getting Kozuki clan, they're the ones who closed off Wano. Woo! It's not Rona. But I told you everything that the Shogun know, because even the Shogun don't know about Laugh-Tale and the One Piece. So even he's like, look, I've told you everything that all of the Shogun knew. Because remember, what Odin learned about Laugh-Tale, nobody else knows about the Roger Pirates. So no Shogun has known what Odin knows or interpreted what he interpreted. So he's like, look, I don't know. Whatever he discovered abroad made him think that opening this country up, in spite of what he knew. So then we cut back into flower capitals. Well, flower capital. And yeah, Green Bull's pretty much still whooping their ass. And then he goes on to say, sad as it is to admit, Kaido's rule was a deterrent that kept enemies away. And he then goes on to say, bring me Luffy, I'll kill him, and I'll be on my way. So Yamato, who's up in this, who he's even been grabbed by Green Bull, is like, yo, let's call Luffy and them for help, you know. And even Yamato, even she says, like, they can beat him. Then Momo finally explains that's not an option, and I won't ask for your help either. He then goes on to say, you have been trapped on Onigashima for all this time. This is finally your chance to be free. And then he goes, I'm just giving you a proper send-off. Hold on. Which means, even though Luffy and them don't need Yamato, which I explained a couple of videos back, that Yamato, that people are like, oh yeah, you know, Odin helped Roger, so Yamato's gonna help Luffy. I mean, potentially, but they don't need her. Odin fulfilled a specific purpose on Roger's crew, which was read the poneglyphs. A, Yamato can't do that. B, they already got Robin, so it's like, they really don't need her. But hey, whatever, I don't really care. Like, it's like, okay, so she's not doing the crew, whatever. But continuing. But yeah, it pretty much confirms that Yamato's leaving. At least she's leaving Wano. Strides, the way she joins Strides could be up in the air, but I think that's pretty cut and clear that she's joining Strides. Anyway, he talks about how everybody's helped him up until this point, and he hasn't had to fight for himself. And he then goes on to say, which kind of makes sense, with like, we've got to be able to beat this threat on our own. If we have to keep asking for help, we'll never be free. We'll never be safe. So then Momonosuke then rustles up a Boral breath, which goes straight through Green Bull, burning him from the inside. And then Momo keeps firing off Boral breaths. You know, yet again, everybody's like, oh, that's Kaido's power. Yes, Boral breath. But then they keep saying, like, his aim isn't great because he keeps firing off and missing and not hitting him square. But eventually, we see the way this Logia power works. like, we see his body, it's burned to a crisp, but behind it something sprouts and his body comes back. So he leaves a husk of himself. So that's how his Logia power works. It's not clean like smoke or sand or fire. His body just comes back from the ground. So then he's like, okay, so you dead ass serious. And he's like, okay. Then he starts from his left hand, he turns into a trunk, and he's like, okay. And he starts loading up with hockey, like, okay, I'm gonna pierce your ass from head to tail. This is over with. Then, bah! We see black lightning in the air, and then he's like, wait, stop. Ugh. He goes, that Supreme King Hockey. Who's doing that? And apparently, well, probably using his senses, he knows who it is. The red-haired pirates. Are you nearby? So then we cut back to Shanks' ship, which is near Wano, and somebody like, Captain, easy with the sudden hockey blast. You guys are foaming at the mouth. And apparently, I guess not like telepathy, but I guess he can like kind of feel Shanks' intentions. But Shanks is vocalizing his intentions for the audience. Now, I'm not accusing you of fighting dirty, neighbor man, but when the new shoots that just changed pirating history are exhausted from their feet, don't you think that what you're doing is a bit much? And then him remembering Luffy, you know, we see a panel when Luffy cut his eye, we see Momo crying after getting scolded from Odin, and we see Momo's mom with Hiyori, and then he says, are you that afraid of the new era? So then he's hands up, he's like, okay. Because yet again, I don't think he can hear him. I think he can just, with their hockey, he can tell his intentions. He's like, okay, whatever. I'm not fighting y'all yet. So then he proceeds to walk away, like, okay, cool, whatever. It's funny that happened, because I had an idea. If there was ever like a One Piece MMO, Conqueror's Hockey would be used as a debuff. Like, using your Conqueror's Hockey, if the opponent was lower enough level, it would debuff them and kind of like do probably like a little bit of damage, but mostly a debuff. And we see that's how it's working here. So then we cut back over to the Flower Capital. We see all the other Straw Hats, well, most of the other Straw Hats, except for Zoro, Luffy, Sanji, and Jinbei, partying. But then we see this entire time, Luffy, Sanji, Zoro, and Jinbei were watching, probably waiting to jump in. Because yet again, the reason they didn't, because it was like, okay, you know, y'all say y'all want to handle it, we'll let you handle it. But you know Luffy probably wasn't going to let them die. So it was probably like, you know, they didn't want to get involved. But so even Sanji's like, so okay, so we're not going to get the fight. And then Zoro's like, okay, Momo, not bad. And then Jinbei's like, that was some monstrous hockey being thrown around. And then yet again, Zoro's like, okay, what was that? And Luffy smiles and said, that reminds me of it made me think of a familiar face. He knows it's Shanks, because he's felt Shanks' hockey, not being used on him, but he's felt it before. So it's like, so he probably remembers when Shanks was holding him, and you know, he against the Lord of the Coast. So it's like, okay, he knows. But with that, this has come to an end. And yet again, I know this is late, but also I definitely want to talk about Black Clover. I enjoyed the chapter. I'm not like, I'm just kind of off of My Hero right now. It's kind of pissing me off. It's just I'm just whatever with it. But definitely want to talk about that. And one of these days I gotta talk about Jujutsu Kaisen. But with that being said, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been your boy the D signing out. See ya. Gotta post this shit.